You are listening to the Nightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Coming up, we will recap Week 2 and look ahead to Week 3 for American Athletic Conference teams, including our Game of the Week, which features Tulsa at Oklahoma State. We'll talk about that with Kelly Hines of the Tulsa World. But first, Tulane played one of the more exciting games on Saturday's college football scoreboard as the Green Wave overcame a late 24-6 deficit to take a 27-24 victory at South Alabama, spoiling the Jaguars' unveiling of their new stadium. Tulane scored the last 21 points of the game and didn't hold a lead until a 16-yard touchdown run by running back Amari Jones with 3:18 left in the ball game. Redshirt freshman running back Tyjae Spears had a game-high 105 yards rushing on 11 carries, and running back Cameron Carroll had 2 key rushing touchdowns. The Green Wave as a team had 203 yards rushing and 4 scores. USF made a winner out of first-year head coach Jeff Scott in their season opener as the Bulls enjoyed a 27-6 victory against the Citadel at Raymond James Stadium. On a hot, muggy night, the Bulls overrode the Bulldogs thanks to a 302-yard rushing performance by the team, including a game-high 87 yards from running back Kelly Joyner. Here now we look at the Week 3 slate of games in the AAC. All games are on Saturday. Austin Peay is at number 14 Cincinnati. That game will kick off at high noon on ESPN+. Cincinnati leads the all-time series 6-0, including a 26-14 victory back in 2017. Houston and Baylor, also at noon kickoff. That'll be on Fox. Baylor leads the all-time series 14-13, and there's been one tie. And the Bears won the last meeting 25 years ago in 1995 by a 47-7 score. Houston had been scheduled to play number 15 Memphis, but due to the COVID-19 cases at Memphis and the ensuing quarantine of student athletes, that was shelved, and Houston was able to get Baylor on the docket rather quickly. Navy at Tulane, another noon kickoff. That'll be on ABC. Tulane leads the all-time series 12-11. There's been one tie. Navy won last year's meeting by a wild 41-38 score. USF at Notre Dame. That will be at 2:30 on USA Network. In the all-time series, USF actually leads 1-0, winning in 2011 by a 23-20 score. Number 13, UCF is at Georgia Tech, 3:30 kickoff on ABC. Georgia Tech leads the all-time series 3-0. I've seen them all very painfully. The last meeting was a Georgia Tech come-from-behind victory 21-17 back in 2000. SMU and Texas will kick off at 6 o'clock. That'll be on CBS Sports Network. SMU leads the all-time series rather handily 32-6 with one tie, and the Mustangs won last year's meeting by a 49-27 score. Coming up next, we look at our Spotlight Game of the Week, Tulsa at Oklahoma State, with Kelly Hines of the Tulsa World. We actually recorded that interview last week because Tulsa and Oklahoma State were scheduled to play a week ago, but due to COVID, it was postponed a week. That game highlighted next when the AAC Report continues in just a moment.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Nightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Our spotlight game of the week this week is Tulsa versus Oklahoma State. Joining us to talk about that is Kelly Hines of the Tulsa World. Kelly, it is great to have you back on the show.
Oh, well, thank you for having me again.
Yes, and so my first and most important question that I ask in an interview these days, because it takes on more meaning than ever before, are you ready for some football?
Oh my gosh, yes.
It has been a long time, and it's finally come to a place where we're going to have a season. We weren't going to have a season, and thankfully the American is playing, so we have a season.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I still don't want to jinx it. It's weird. It's like right here, and yet it still seems so far off.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything goes on the upside. So let's talk about Tulsa going into the season. They were 4-8 in 2019. Still considered an improvement season because you look at the fact that they beat UCF. They were a field goal away from beating Memphis. SMU, an overtime game. You can even argue they had Cincinnati playing a tough game as well. So talk about the impact of what last season had on the program.
I think especially the way the season ended, to have 2 of the 4 wins come in November, and especially the big win at East Carolina, I think that gave a lot of confidence, a lot of momentum going into the offseason. Obviously, we didn't know that the offseason was going to, be what it was, and spring football was going to be almost non-existent, and obviously, everything that's happened since then. But that still, I think, generated some confidence for a team that really needed that, especially on offense, to perform the way the offense did at East Carolina, to be very balanced, to put up a ton of yards. I think that was more of a, we can do this. We have the tools necessary, and having all of those guys back, you definitely think that they can build on that. So, I think the way the season ended really was a boost that I think in a normal year would have probably been a little bit more significant. You could build on it more in the spring, but I still think that it was valuable.
So let's talk about the offense first, and Zach Smith back as the returning starting quarterback, almost 3,000 yards, almost 3,300 yards last year, 19 TDs and just 9 picks, which was a pretty solid season, and definitely great for having that continuity there at the quarterback position.
Yeah, for Tulsa to, not have had that since, Dane Evans was at Tulsa, and his last season was 2016. So to have kind of different quarterbacks, since then, and now to have the same guy in back-to-back seasons, I think that's huge. I think Zach Smith, he's improved since last season, but like you said, I think it was a solid season. I think, when he had time to throw, he was pretty good. Getting sacked, 39 times, not really ideal. Some of that on him, a lot of that on the offensive line. And there were miscues that were a result of that. So, I think that he's worked a lot on his timing, getting the ball out faster, being, quicker with his decision-making. I think that all of that is going to help. And, I think that having more weapons at receiver this season, that's going to help too. I think it's going to be a much deeper rotation of guys than, what Philip Montgomery has done in the past, which has really been only a handful of guys used at receiver. So I think that will help. And, I think the offensive line will be a lot better. So that will certainly make a difference. But I think Zach has a lot of the tools. And, being a senior, it's time to kind of put it all together.
Have they done anything specifically to address the offensive line, or is this just another season of them maturing?
I think that it's still kind of a wait and see sort of deal. I think that with Xavier Gadlin opting out of the season, I think that hurts. But they have some options there that kind of move pieces around. I think, based on the experience of last season, they should definitely be better. They have a transfer from Oklahoma State, coincidentally, who has joined the team. It's still up in the air whether he's going to, be able to play. He probably won't play this week. But, they have some good pieces there. So I think that, and they have a new position coach there, in Zach Hansen. So I think that that group is headed in the right direction.
And what about the rushing attack? How does the running game look this season?
It's probably the strongest position group, certainly on offense. I think the stat is that only Clemson returns more rushing yards in terms of personnel back at running back. So, between Shamari Brooks and Corey Taylor II, those are two guys who, really should have 1,000-yard seasons. Shamari Brooks should leave as the top running back in program history in terms of yards. And then they have a slew of guys behind those. They have a pair of SEC transfers, one from Texas A&M, one from Missouri. How those guys fit into the mix, whether they're going to get waivers, all of that remains to be seen. But, they have a lot of options there. A very deep group. They could go like 5 guys deep on, at running back. So that's huge. I think they're pretty much set there.
And, of course, the receiver core, Keenan Johnson is gone after a 46-catch season last year, but a lot of returners in that position group.
Yeah, for sure. I think it starts with, Keelan Stokes as a slot receiver and Sam Crawford Jr. As a wideout. I think those guys are, they have the experience behind them. I think that this should be a big year for them. But they've got so many other guys. Probably more versatility, and that makes it more realistic to spread the ball around more because they have guys who can do some different things. But they have some options there. I think those two will be the main two, Crawford and Stokes.
And then let's look at the defensive side of the ball. Now, 395 yards per game on average they gave up last season when they lost, and they gave up 31 points more than 5 times, which all resulted in L's. And they've got several of their top tacklers to replace. How are they going to do that on that side?
It's interesting because they have so few so-called starters back, but they still have 11 guys who start at least one game in their career. So they have some pieces to work with for sure. There are, certain spots that are stronger than others. A corner, they had a guy drafted to the NFL who made an NFL team, Reggie Robinson II, and they lose him at corner, and they still have basically 2 starters back because Caleb Evans was out for almost the entire season last year. So between him and Allie Green IV, those are 2 really solid corners. And then, at linebacker, probably the most talented guy on the team, Zaven Collins. And so those are going to be key pieces within the defense, but they do have quite a bit to replace elsewhere, especially on the defensive line. When you have a 3-man front and you're having to replace, 2 starters there, that's a lot you have to replace. So I think that they have a lot of potential. They have guys who have played quite a bit as reserves, but now you're the guy, you're stepping into that role. It's going to be a little bit different. And for their first test to be, at Oklahoma State, which I think, most people know that Oklahoma State's offense is very potent. So that's a huge challenge to start off with. But I think as the season goes on, that defense should get better.
And let's talk about the Oklahoma State game. Now, this is a continuing series, so it's good that Tulsa gets to play some of the big boys outside of the American Conference within the state. Granted, this is not an Oklahoma State game, but there's definitely some rivalry aspects to this where, you got guys who have played against each other in high school going at it. Can you speak to that rivalry a little bit?
Yeah, I think some of that, I think because there are more, it seems like there are more Oklahoma State alumni in the Tulsa area, and that kind of adds to the rivalry. It will be a little bit different with not anywhere near a full stadium, but it's still a game that in state, especially in the Tulsa area, means a lot to a lot of people because so many of the guys from both teams played in state. What high school football is, especially in the Tulsa area, is, it's a big deal here, and there's a ton of talent in the Tulsa area. So both teams have a huge Tulsa presence on their rosters. And so there's a lot of familiarity there. And, Oklahoma State has, I wouldn't say, absolutely dominated the last few meetings, but, it hasn't been especially close of late. So, I think that, Oklahoma State's a 3-touchdown favorite. That's how they typically win these games, if not by more. So, I think it'll be, a game where Tulsa, it's going to be tough to win that, but you never know. This whole calendar year has been completely crazy. So I think anything can happen in any game. And I think especially when you take the crowd out of it somewhat and with it being the first game of the season, you never know what can happen.
Yeah, and talk about Oklahoma State and what kind of challenges they present as far as what will Tulsa have to do to negate Oklahoma State to have a chance in this game?
I think they're going to have to stop an offense that is, I think going to end up being one of the best in the country. So, that's not, like I said, with what Tulsa has to replace on defense. I think that's going to be a really difficult task because really what Oklahoma State has with its offense is like a three-headed monster. I mean, they have a quarterback who's confident, who's a playmaker, and they have an exceptional running back who, is probably going to be a Heisman candidate. And they have a receiver who's one of the best in the country. So, that's difficult for any team to stop, especially, when you're a group of 5 program, that's going to be tough to go up against, one of the best offenses in the country, certainly a Big 12 contender. So, I think it's going to be important for Tulsa to try to, hang around, try to put up some touchdowns to stay in the game. I think that there will be some opportunities for that just based on what Tulsa has on its offensive side. It's just Oklahoma State has quite a bit of firepower, and they're pretty skilled on defense too. Yeah.
Well, now you are an Oklahoma State grad, is that correct?
That's true.
Yes. So you went to school at Oklahoma State. You cover Tulsa, and I know you're not supposed to root because you're a journalist, and we understand all that. But do you have emotions that ride into this? Because I know you cover Tulsa, you get to know these kids and things like that. Do you have any emotional, conflicts covering this particular game?
No, not really. I think the thing that I like about covering, games involving, these two programs in particular, there's a level of familiarity that, isn't quite the same when it's, even Tulsa and Oklahoma. I haven't, seen Oklahoma as much up close. I have seen some, but it's a little bit different when you attend a school and you know the ins and outs of the program. And I covered Oklahoma State previously. So, I think that just makes it easier to cover a game. Certainly the first game of the season on deadline, it's just a lot more comfortable when you know both programs pretty well. So not really any emotions behind it. People always ask, oh, do you root for this team or that team? I always say I root for myself. I root that that I hope that I'm going to write a good story on deadline. I hope I'm going to make my deadline. Like, that sounds really selfish, but, that's what it's more about that to me than the outcome of the game. I just want, my work to be good and on time. And, that's the biggest thing for me.
Well, after Tulsa gets through with this game, of course, what do you think their prospects are in the American this season? There are no divisions this year, so that will change the balance a little bit. What are your thoughts on Tulsa as far as the American campaign is concerned?
It was kind of hard for me to decide where to put Tulsa, in the preseason poll, just because, I don't really know how this team will stack up, because it seems like, last year, Tulsa wasn't really that far off, but, they still finished last in their division. It's hard to kind of figure out where everybody is going into the season, with players opting out and, different, just a lot of things that go into it. But I do feel like Tulsa is, a team that could, surprise some people. I think just about every season they've had a victory that was unexpected. I mean, you mentioned UCF. I think the year before that it was Houston. They have the capability to upset teams. It's just trying to be consistent. That's been an issue. I just don't really know how to project this season. I think that in a normal year, if they hadn't had 2 games canceled, I would have felt really confident in saying that this was a team that would make a bowl. But, even if there are bowl games, if you have to get to 500 record, that's going to be tough when your non-conference opponents are Oklahoma State and Arkansas State, both games on the road. And then you have to, do pretty well in the American, which is not going to be easy for, a lot of teams. I think that's a tough schedule for a program like Tulsa that, they still, they're still trying to get back to the point where they were, several years ago. And you have no idea how things are going to come together, particularly on defense. So, I think it helps to have some of these breaks between games, 2 weeks between Oklahoma State and Arkansas State, not just for testing and all of that, but just to try to build on what they have and kind of go on from there.
And as far as the rest of the conference, who do you see as the favorites?
Man, there are so many teams that I'm like, they could win it. I could see them winning. I think UCF is certainly very skilled. Memphis, Cincinnati. I mean, you could make an argument for the several teams at the top. I'm curious to see what Navy's going to do, because Navy's a program that you really shouldn't ever count out. A team that can do so much with a triple option. I think that Tulane is always going to be underrated, and that's a program that I really think could do some good things. So, I think it makes it interesting to not have the divisions, but then there are programs like Tulsa that have to kind of fight their way even harder to not get lost in all of it. There are those programs that are viewed as being near the bottom that nobody's really talking about, and who knows what they're going to do. I think that the conference is kind of getting to the point where it is, I think it's getting to the point with football where it is in basketball, where, everybody's, kind of trending upward, and it's hard to kind of separate for a lot of the programs, especially the programs in the bottom half that I don't think are bad programs. It's just the conference has, so many good coaches and a lot of talent that it's really hard to get into that top half.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I look at the lack of no divisions, and that makes it that you have more teams to try to jump over to get where you want to go.
Yeah.
So
and not having UConn, I mean, I don't think that there are that many programs that are really like down and out. I think that there's a lot more parity in the league.
Yeah, most definitely about that. Well, Kelly, it's been a lot of fun, and we certainly always appreciate your insights on covering Tulsa. And if you would, let the folks know where they can follow you on social media and any other work you want to promote.
Twitter is a good place to find my stuff. It's Kelly Hines TW. If you're interested in cat pictures, you can find me on Instagram. It's Kelly Elaine.
See, and why Kelly is one of my favorites is because she's in the cat rescue business. So that is so awesome that you do that. And we were chatting a little bit before we started the interview, and you said, there are plenty of kitties to be adopted. Yes.
Oh, yes. No shortage of cats. If anyone is in this region of the country near me, interested in a cat, just find me and I will hook you up.
There you go. Outstanding. And Kelly, we will root for you to have an excellent coverage of the game coming up this weekend, and we appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Tulsa at Oklahoma State will be a noon kickoff on ESPN. Oklahoma State leads the all-time series 42-28. There have been 5 ties over the course of that lengthy series, and Oklahoma State won last year's game by a 40-21 score. Back with some final news and notes around the conference when the AAC Report comes back in a moment.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Nightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this.
We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys?
My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong. Spoiler alert! Until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated. Because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Nightline Sports Network. Thank you for your time, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Oh, wait. I'm being told in my ear that this is a podcast, and there are no schedules. Well, this is awkward.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fagley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Nightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Nightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Checking now the latest news and notes around the American Athletic Conference in the rankings in the AP poll. Cincinnati comes in at number 13, UCF 14, and Memphis 16. The coaches poll has UCF and Cincinnati flip-flopped, with the Knights at number 13, the Bearcats 14, and Memphis up to number 15. Of course, it's the first poll of the season where the conferences that opted out, at least for the time being, depending on the Big Ten, are not included in the rankings. Player of the Week honors are combined for Week 1 and Week 2 because there were just a few games in the first 2 weeks. The Offensive Player of the Week was Brady White of Memphis. He was also chosen as the Davey O'Brien National Offensive Player of the Week after the opening week of the 2020 season. In the 37-24 win against Arkansas State, White completed 27 of 37 for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns, including 2 third-quarter TDs that put the game away. Had his 5th career game with at least 4 TD passes, had 319 yards of total offense. He added a career-high 39 rushing yards against the Red Wolves. The Defensive Player of the Week was Cameron Sample of Tulane. He keyed a defensive effort that held South Alabama without a touchdown in the final 27 minutes of the game. In the Green Wave rally of a 27-24 road win, Sample registered 7 tackles with 2 sacks, a career-high 3.5 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and 2 quarterback hurries. And the Special Teams Player of the Week is Chris Nagar of SMU. A transfer to Texas accounted for 7 points to provide the winning margin in the Mustangs' 31-24 victory at Texas State in their season opener. He kicked a 32-yard field goal with 2:20 left to give SMU a 10-point lead and went 4 for 4 on extra points in his debut. And that'll do it for this week's AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.